what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan. Across the table from me is Chris.
Hello, everyone.
Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing it really well. It's Friday. It's movie season. It's during the summer, so a lot of good stuff out. So
it's hot outside, and it's nice and cool inside the movie theater.
Absolutely.
So that's the plan for several days we've got coming up here in the next few weeks of summer that we've got.
Why mow the yard when you can go sit in the theater?
That's right. Why not just let the yard just keep growing?
That's right.
And blossoming and blooming, and you can go see some movies and catch up with the yard work maybe when it gets to be fall.
Right.
You know, just one big swoop, you can just kind of cut it all back again. So,
exactly.
If only, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned summer, that is a little bit of a theme for part of our review, and that we are going to be reviewing today in our episode one big summer blockbuster movie. But then we're going to switch gears and review a film that's probably the farthest end of a summer blockbuster movie. First, we're going to review Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the latest Marvel and Sony collaboration on the wall crawler, the latest version starring Tom Holland. Then we're going to switch gears and talk about a film called Norman. And let me make sure I've got the subtitle correct, because this has a very long subtitle. Norman, the moderate rise and tragic fall of a New York fixer, starring Richard Gere. So we're going to be discussing that film as our second review. After that, we'll hit a couple movie news items just to get some notes on the table and see what we have to say about some of the film productions we're hearing about. And then we'll cap off the review or the episode with our recommendation of the episode. That's when you and I both provide one film that we feel like, hey, you know what? You're trying to stay inside. You're trying to stay cool out of the summer heat. What's a film you can pull up on iTunes or Amazon or something we think is worth checking out that either we stumbled across recently or have just been reminded of before this recording? So, Chris, that's our plan. That's the agenda. Everything sound good?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's get started then. So into our first review, which is Spider-Man Homecoming.
Finally, here we go.
Good evening, Peter.
Whoa!
You have 576 possible web shooter combinations.
That is awesome. I can keep that suit?
Yeah, doesn't fit me.
When's our next retreat?
What, next mission? We'll call you. All right?
It's not a hug. I'm just grabbing the door for you.
I'm not there yet.
All right, kid. Good luck out there.
This is my chance to prove myself.
We have a Spanish quiz.
You gotta get better at this part of the job.
I don't understand. Oh, I'm intimidated.
What are you hiding, Peter?
Yeah, Spider-Man!
Sick of Mr. Stark treating me like a kid.
But you are a kid.
Yeah, a kid who can stop a bus with his bare hands.
So even in recent history, with all the superhero movies, people get tired of reboots or reimaginings. Spider-Man, we had 3 Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire.
Those were the Sam Raimi movies.
Sam Raimi movies.
There was the Sam Raimi trilogy. Yes.
Sam Raimi trilogy. People are hot and cold on those. Then we had the Andy Garfield. We got 2 movies. So it was like we had 3, then we had 2. Okay.
That's the Andrew Garfield directed by Mark Webb, which, I'm sorry, that should have worked out.
Because his last name was Webb.
Last name's Webb. It should have been perfect. But anyway.
Which I liked the first one of the Garfield, and then the second one kind of went off the rails.
I really liked the first one of the reboot. I know a lot of people had problems with it, but I thought it was actually really good. It's probably, before this review and maybe still after this review, it's probably my favorite of the 5 Spider-Man movies that have been produced so far.
So, and now we have Spider-Man Homecoming, directed by John Watts, who also directed Cop Car recently.
We did review Cop Car probably last year sometime.
I think so. So, we see a trend of 3, 2, and now 1. Alan, do you think with this film, Spider-Man Homecoming, do you think John Watts has something to worry about? Do you think he'll, not direct another movie after this or not direct another Spider-Man movie? Or depending on how this one went, do you think they'll bring him back?
All right. Well, okay. So the question you're asking me is one I have to tie more to box office performance. So let me
as
just
opposed
couch
to how
it with
you
that.
feel about it. Okay,
Yes.
sure.
So I would say from a
Understandable.
box office performance standpoint, it's doing really, really good. It's getting really good reviews in general for a superhero movie. And yes, he's locked in. He's going to be directing the next film. There's absolutely no doubt about it at this point. I think they've already started planning. I'm sure they've already started doing something to get ready for it. And then Tom Holland, who is our new Spider-Man, will absolutely be brought back again.
He's locked in.
He's locked in.
Do you know if they, just a quick aside, do you know if they have locked him in, like, Christian Bale signed on to do a certain number of Batman movies? Do you know if Tom Holland has said, like, I'm going to do, or he, like, contractually he's going to do at least 3 of these? Do we know? No?
I don't know for sure. The only thing I've heard is the gentleman who is basically over all the Marvel films, Kevin Feige, has gone on record in an interview saying that Tom Holland's arc as Spider-Man is already written out as 5 movies, but not to say 5 Spider-Man movies, just his storyline
He's going to
takes
be a
him.
main character in 5.
He will be featured in 5 movies
Okay.
as a bigger storyline of his character.
Now, that doesn't count Civil War, or does
I don't know if it does or not.
Okay.
So, he may already be 2 films in. We don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're definitely counting on him for the long haul. I think when you've got a film that is raked in more money than they expected it to make this first opening weekend and is getting reviews better than average for a superhero movie, that's kind of a recipe you don't mess with. It's like, you got to keep that going, right?
Okay.
So box office wise, yeah, they're all set to go. You're asking me, though, I think more intentionally, I think you're asking me my opinion of the film. Sure. Let me just, I feel like a broken record because I think I said the same exact thing when we reviewed the other Spider-Man movies that came out with Andrew Garfield. Okay. I'm a Spider-Man geek. Okay. I'm just laying it out there. I've got boxes of old Spider-Man comics in my basement. He is my favorite superhero. Batman's a close second, but it's still Spider-Man. He's the one I grew up with. He's the one I read as a kid. He's the one I wanted to be when I was, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old.
Fair enough.
So that puts me in an interesting position, Chris, in that I both get excited about these films when they come out, all of them, but I'm also probably the most critical of them. Because
you really know the source material.
I do. And also I know how the character should be handled to make it work, So I'm going to get to my opinion in a second, I promise. But just give me 1 or 2 minutes to geek out for a minute.
Sure.
The Sam Raimi trilogy with
Tobey Maguire
were good films. Well, the first 2. Third one was a mess. Sure. But the first 2 were good films. The second one with Alfred Molina
as Dr.
was
Octopus.
the best of the 3. It was a really good, well-made movie. My problem with all 3 of those films is I just thought Tobey Maguire was horrible as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Okay.
He had no personality, none of the sense of humor that is what you get from the Spider-Man character, none of the real insecurities that you're supposed to have with Peter Parker. I never really felt like Peter Parker had it really that bad off, as a teenager in a high school environment. So it just never worked. I just never got any sense of real emotion from him. So I was already muted on all 3 of those films because I just didn't care for the lead actor. I thought the directing was fine. I thought the villain in the second movie was really good. I thought there were some great moments throughout the trilogy, but overall, I don't see that as Spider-Man.
Okay.
Then you had the 2 Mark Webb films that came out, and I really liked the first one because I thought Andrew Garfield was a whole lot closer to what Spider-Man ought to be. He's cracking jokes. He has a real light sense of humor when he's under the mask. When he's not under the mask, he's a little more tormented. He's a little more self-conscious. He's got a lot of personal issues going on. I thought it was a lot closer to where it should be.
Okay.
So I really liked that movie. Then the second one came out, and it was a mess. They just threw everything that made the first one good out the door and just made a bloated, huge superhero mess.
Right.
Okay. So here we are. I'm back to where we are now. Okay. So I will say on the record, I really liked Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, there's a couple reasons why I like it. Number one, first and foremost, Tom Holland, he's got it. He nailed it.
I would agree.
He nailed Peter Parker. He nailed Spider-Man. Spider-Man is funny and aloof acting. Although, under the mask, he's also self-conscious and he's also worried and he's also got a lot of things on his mind. You've got that balance going on, and I think he played it perfectly in both sides.
Okay.
So even if I hated the rest of the movie, I would say I'm looking forward to seeing this saga continue with him in the main role.
Fair enough.
I think there were some other elements of the film that were good. I don't think the film was great. I do think there were some things could have been handled better. And I can get into those in a minute. Most of them are pretty big areas for me. A couple are a little nitpicky, but overall, I will say this was a really fun movie.
Okay.
We needed a good, fun superhero movie, I felt like. If you're going to do superhero movies, have one with a good sense of humor.
Right.
Have one that can play a little irreverent. And I think the fact that it was all high school-based settings made a big difference, too.
Helps it be irreverent.
It did. It helps make it be different. Sure. You know, you're not going to have the heaviest stakes in the world with a high school cast.
Right.
And that's okay. You know, I mean, the stakes in this film were never really that high, if you think about it. I mean, yeah. I mean, one person I know of got killed. Yes, if the villain succeeds, there would be some problems. But it's not like the world's about to blow up. It's not like there's like an entire school held with guns to their heads waiting for the superhero to save them.
There is a giant tanker that gets split into that's going to fall into the ocean or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's some things that started to build up. Yeah, okay, you're right. There was that element.
But in general, I know what
compared to the other films, it's like I didn't feel like the stakes of the world were on this one movie. This is a much smaller film, which was kind of nice. So I will say, yeah, overall, I had a fun time with it. I thought it was great. I did think there was some really great moments. It could have been really, really, really good if it hadn't been for some things that I'll get to in a little bit.
Okay.
So, anyway, Chris, I'm really anxious to hear your thoughts because you tend to suffer from the superhero burnout quicker than I do. And even when we talked about Spider-Man Homecoming, I think every time I mentioned it, I saw a visible either eye roll or exhale because you're thinking, oh my God, here we go again. It's another Spider-Man movie with another person playing the lead role. So I'm really anxious to hear your thoughts.
Well, there again, it kind of helps because I go in with such low expectations for Spider. Because I'm the opposite of you. Batman was my person, so I go into all those movies with really high expectations. So Spider-Man, I'm kind of lukewarm on. Don't really care. Wasn't looking forward to this one at all. But I have to say, I think it is probably of the Spider-Man franchise, maybe my favorite.
Really? Cool.
And I think the reasoning is, I feel like, even though not as big aficionado as far as like detail oriented about Peter Parker versus Spider-Man, but I agree. I think Tom Holland did a really good job.
Yes.
Not being so familiar with the source material, but familiar enough. I've seen all the movies.
You probably not being familiar with the source material. Actually, I think in this situation helps you enjoy the movie more. Probably. Because they took a lot of liberties that rankle me as a fan. But if I wasn't a Spider-Man fan, I wouldn't care.
Let me hit some of my high points because I bet I was able to enjoy them because I didn't know background.
Sure.
Because the next, after Tom Holland, my next big thing that I really liked about the movie was Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Yeah, I agree. He was really good.
Really, really, really good. Fun anyway from the natural geek boy to see him have been a hero as Batman, come back and be a bad guy who actually has big wings again. Not like a bat, but like a bird. And after he was in Birdman, so it's kind of like winking for him to be the Vulture.
It's a very meta type of role to play.
But he just played it so perfectly. And his range is, great anyway, but even within this movie, he plays a bad guy who is, very in people's face and very rough, but then he also has a chance to show a softer side. There's some things about this movie that I do not want to spoil because I was completely not expecting them to happen. They did. And it was amazing when they did.
I will. Let me just key off of this because I do want to mention this as well while you're talking about it. I'll admit the first half of the film, I was a little disappointed in Michael Keaton because I'm like, he's not on the screen that much. Honestly, I felt like he was still playing Michael Keaton, like a really toned down Beetlejuice, kind of just a little manic, but not a whole lot going on. When it got to what you were talking about, there's a kind of a change, there's a twist, there's a something that you learn. When that happens, and the scenes that immediately follow that are some of the best scenes I've seen in a superhero movie in quite a while.
Absolutely.
And it made the villain role so perfect for me the rest of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So if it hadn't got to that point, I would have come out with a very muted opinion of his performance. But that, all I will say is the car ride scene is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
There's a car ride scene and also some of the concluding scenes of the movie with the Vulture. Some stuff that it seems not being really familiar with the background material. It just all seems to be weaving things together, but not in an irritating way for me.
Yeah.
And setting up, obviously, sequels and things like that. But there again, not in an overly irritating way, in a very interesting way.
Well, you gotta understand, this is a world building film. They are building out a world. I mean, it's a comic book movie. That's what they're going to do. I thought they did it in a fairly subtle way to where it didn't beat you over the head with it. It had an ending to the movie. Mm-hmm. It did open up some doors of where the movie could go in the future, like other sequels, but it didn't. You weren't just left knowing that it was like so perfectly set up sequel. There was the one credit scene midway through the credits that did kind of set a little bit of some groundwork of maybe where they're going, but it wasn't bad. I thought it was very muted the way they handled it. So I agree with you on that. So please continue. What else did you like?
Yeah, I mean, those were things that I liked. And like you were saying, I know enough about the Vulture that I knew that, you know, he was obviously, he flew, and he had, in the comics, I'd at least seen the character, and he had this big, like, ruffle around his neck, and it was kind of like a bird, you know.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I liked about this movie, even though I'm not totally familiar, I can totally geek out like you could, but they kept enough details, but they kind of did a Christopher Nolan type thing where the details were there, but they made them more realistic.
Yeah.
So instead of this being
More
like
practical.
a ruffle of feathers around us like he was turning into a bird, no, it was just this jacket that he would often wear when he was flying his Vulture that had kind of a white puffy collar.
It was a bomber jacket, and it fit with the motif of what he was doing.
And so it worked.
Yeah.
Not being overly familiar, although you've talked about it on past episodes when we've talked about Spider-Man, he was the main villain, but in this film there were subtle other villains, but they didn't stick it in your face like they did with the second Andrew Garfield movie, where there were all these big villains, all with these crazy superpowers, and it was distracting. I don't know the character's name, but I think he's supposed to be the Tinkerer or whatever.
You have the
Tinkerer. He was helping. All I know is he's Cal from Orange is the New Black.
That's correct. He is.
So, and actually another person from Orange is the New Black made a cameo in this movie as well.
Yes.
Kind of crazy. But so he was there and he helped out the Vulture, but it wasn't in your face and it wasn't irritating. He wasn't
a, you know, when you put up a movie poster of the villains, there's one villain.
Right.
These other guys are all like part of his crew, and they may have like some gadgets or things, and you know that they're becoming certain parts of his crew, but they never compete for the villain time like as much as, you know, other films have done in the past.
Yeah, and they just never seem to have the patience for that.
Yeah.
I know that there's a villain in Spider-Man called Shocker or the Shocker or something. And here it's funny because they have two characters kind of trying to do that. Like one does it, but doesn't do it very successfully. And then another guy kind of takes over.
Has to take over his role. So.
That was, you know, I just thought that was really clever stuff. Yeah. But still in service of the overall movie, never distracting from the Vulture, Michael Keaton, and never taking the story completely away from Spider-Man, Peter Parker being in high school. Like I thought all those things really wove together really well, and like I say, I think it was probably my favorite Spider-Man movie. I do have two dislikes of all the things. One of them I'm going to make you guess because I think you'll be able to guess it. The other one,
I know what it is.
Yeah, of course you do. Go ahead and tell me what it is.
Is it the heavy reliance on Tony Stark, Iron Man throughout the film?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my second dislike, the one that I didn't know if you would grasp. No, the other one is, God bless him. I love him.
Oh, Stan Lee.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always complain about his cameos. Of course, he has a cameo in this, and it's fine at first. It's like set up. He's an old person sticking his head out a window in an apartment building. Fine. And it's like that. But no, do they let that just do it? No, they have to come back again. I'm like, come on. Why couldn't you have just let it be? Why did you have to have him like utter more dialogue? I was just like groaning. But it is a minor nitpick. I think I'm the only person that really gets annoyed at Stan Lee cameos.
I think you are. So, you know, I'm going to let you have that.
Like,
but
hey, kids, get off my lawn.
I got nothing to say about it. I'm just going to let you take that.
Now, the one that I'm surprised you actually picked up on, I understand the framing device of Tony Stark and what's his last name? Happy Pants? Happy Hogan. Let's be Happy Pants.
Yes, his name is Happy
Hogan,
Dance.
Happy Pants. Cheers to them for not changing his name and letting him stay Happy Hogan. I mean, you know, hats off to you because, and for him to be able to stand there and, what's his name? The actor's name? The
Oh,
guy-
Jon Favreau.
Yeah, Jon Favreau. For him to be there, to stand there and take being called Happy all the time. Have like,
It's a very 1960s name they came up with, and they
kinda
stuck
like-
with it.
It's
so.
kind of like the Captain America Bucky thing, which is like
Bucky, and then
terrible.
there's even one of Captain America's crew is Dum Dum Dugan, and they actually kept Dum Dum in one of the Captain America movies. Yeah,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so bringing it back into Spider-Man: Homecoming, I liked the way the beginning of the movie was happening with kind of a video diary that tied in Civil War.
That was nice.
Because my wife, when we were sitting there before the movie started, she's like, I don't really remember like the whole thing where we're coming into this movie. Kind of when it started, I'm like, yeah, well, just it'll be okay. I'll explain it to you afterwards if you need it, because she's like, it's been a long time. But they totally took that concern.
It was very
away.
creative.
And actually they
Very
patched
awesome.
in some of the event, like the very first Avengers movie, I think, if I'm thinking correct, because there's some fallout from that helps Michael Keaton.
Well, that's
start
in
to
the
build.
before the movie. Actually, the very first scene is you get a little bit of understanding of Michael Keaton, Adrian Toomes. His business was helping to clean up stuff after the Avengers big fight in the first Avengers movie several years ago. It was like 8 years ago.
Right. So
so it really kind of helped set the framework for it. And then you went to the video diary. Peter Parker was videotaping the whole time he was in Germany with the whole Civil War battle where we first introduced it.
Right.
So it was a
a
really creative way of getting you up to speed with it.
It was wonderful. And it just, man, I really, really appreciated it. And, for this to be kind of like the first Spider-Man movie, they don't fall into the trappings of a typical reboot.
Yeah.
Like,
No origin.
even Andrew Garfield, that first movie he was in, they kind of did the whole origin thing again just because they feel like they have to. But with this one, they didn't bother.
Yeah.
You do see him kind of doing a little bit of suit stuff, as far as like the intricacies of his suit. But that's basically it. And you don't, I really like that. But yeah, so I understood the Happy Hogan, Happy Pants, and Tony Stark thing at the beginning.
Happy feet.
I understand it at the end, but I didn't sit there and count them, but it got to be every time they showed up, I kind of rolled my eyes and shrugged because I was sick of seeing them. It's like, let Tom Holland do his thing. Don't keep that. So let's say they appeared in there 6 times. I wish it would have been more like 3 times or something.
I'm with you on
half as
that.
many Happy Hogan and
There were 1 or 2
Tony
instances
Stark.
where, and that's part of my beef with the film from a geek perspective, a big fan perspective. Spider-Man's a loner. I mean, his very first issue of his back in 1963, he's trying to become part of the Fantastic Four because he just got his powers. He's
so
like,
not the Avengers, but the Fantastic
that's right.
Four.
He's like, I'm going to be a part of the Fantastic Four. They've got to let me in because I'm like superpowered now and all. And they basically tell him no. And he's like, well, forget you guys. And he basically says, I'm just going to be a loner. And he is a loner for a huge part of his career. So this whole idea that this first movie with this new version of him, he's so reliant and so dependent on Iron Man and the Avengers and all that. I didn't care for that from a story standpoint. And the fact that Tony Stark was brought in so frequently helped keep reinforcing that idea. Now,
So it's interesting.
I love the way
you didn't like it as a fan because you knew background.
Yeah.
I didn't like it just because I was irritated with the fact that
I will say, I thought the way they ended the film, if that was the only scene that Tony Stark was in and it ended in that way, perfect. Because it's like
the press conference.
Yeah, because it sets the scene up. It creates the Spider-Man character at the very end of the film that I want to see.
Right.
So I'm happy. I'm thinking, knock on wood, hoping that maybe what they do is say, okay, that first movie, we really got to tie him into this whole Marvel Universe thing. But now that we've got him established, let's let him go do his stuff. Because that's kind of how the movie was kind of framing it at the end.
Seemingly.
I hope that's where they go. I hope it doesn't become, the next movie is now it's him and Captain America's in every other scene. And I want him to do his own stuff and have his own adventures. And I hope that's where they're setting it up for. But I agree with you. The Iron Man over-reliance was a little heavy for me.
Okay.
Do you have any other dislikes?
No, that was it. It was Stanley's cameos and
Let me just two things. I don't want to go on drone too long. The 2 things that were issues for me.
Okay.
One, I just didn't think the action scenes were very well directed. I like the fact that they were smaller in scope. They weren't this gigantic, overdone CGI mess like so many superhero films. But as I look back on every action scene, I just didn't feel like they were as exciting as they could be. Especially the last one, the fight on a jet and the jet. It just wasn't. It just didn't grab me. I think I think there was an opportunity to make those action scenes much stronger and much, much more impactful and emotional. And it just, I never felt that. I almost felt like, okay, we're in an action scene and it's kind of on autopilot until the action scene's done. That's the way I felt about, there really weren't that many action scenes. It was not a overdone action movie, which is nice. It had a lot more character development. It had a lot more dialogue. But the action scenes themselves, I don't know if is it John Watts?
It is.
Yeah.
John Watts.
I don't know if he's quite got the handle on a big spectacle action scene yet. So that's my one. I think it was also compounded by the fact, and this has nothing to do with Spider-Man Homecoming. Sorry, I'm having to bring it into this review. This is all about our local multiplex. I understand that bulbs are expensive and you want to run bulbs as long as you possibly can.
Dim? Your screen
It was dim. It was to the point where that final whole fight scene, I could barely make it out half the time what was going on.
Wow.
And it's just, I'm sorry, if you run a theater, I know bulbs are expensive. I know you don't want to blow them out quicker and you turn down the brightness to save them longer, but it sucks to watch a film and the bulb is dim. I could tell the very second the film started. I'm like, I leaned over to Nick, my son. I'm like, okay, the bulb's dim. This is really, I hope there's no dark scenes in the movie. Sure enough, the final fight was in a dark scene and it was really hard to see. So that may have impacted my ability to enjoy the action scenes.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough.
The other thing I'll say, and this is the geek side coming out, I am all for, I love the fact that they played it kind of loose with his true origins. They played it loose with the comic series. I mean, they really kind of wanted to create their own version here. And I'm all for that. Okay. I have no issue with it. But to just randomly throw in classic characters' names and attach them to people that have absolutely nothing in common with that classic character is kind of ridiculous and just more. It's almost
Without
like
trying to spoil anything. Are you talking about love interests?
No. Actually, Liz is a character from the comics.
Okay.
And she's fine because she's basically just somebody that Peter pines for early in his career at high school. It's fine.
Okay.
So she was fine. And I thought she was really good. I liked watching her on screen.
Okay.
Ned, his friend Ned.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. I like the character.
Yeah,
He's a lot of fun.
so
It
do
was
I.
actually a good move to have Spider-Man with a confidant because we have never had that before.
I thought that was cool.
It gives him somebody to bounce things off of and all that.
But-
His name is Ned Leeds. Ned Leeds in the comics could not be any more different a character, but they just wanted to grab a name that people would recognize from the comics and throw it on a completely different character. Ned Leeds in the comics, he was a newspaper reporter who was a little older than Peter. He actually married Betty Brant, who worked at the newspaper. He eventually became the Hobgoblin, which is a villain. I mean, it's a completely different character. They actually pulled this guy, their Ned, from another version of Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man does have a best friend called Genki, who is...
Genki,
Genke.
So we could have had Happy and Genki.
Yeah. And he looks just like Ned in the movie. I mean, spitting image. But they didn't want to call him that. They wanted to call him Ned Leeds because Ned is a classic Spider-Man name. I'm like, that kind of stuff is just... It's almost like overdone fan service. It's like, we just want to throw these names in. No rhyme or reason to it. Let's just give them these random names.
Okay.
I don't care for that. I think that was really dumb. So again, that's my little geek nitpick on it. The last thing I'll say is I like the fact that they did not do a full origin in this movie.
Yes.
I agree with you on that. However, Spider-Man is Spider-Man because of Uncle Ben. We should know that that's still in the background. And he even refers to it at one point. He's like, my aunt's had a really rough couple of years. And I think we're supposed to assume that's because her husband was killed. And Spider-Man was somewhat responsible for that. That's the origin story. So you have a classic moment in this movie where Spider-Man is having to overcome a very difficult situation. He's strenuous, like physically having to crawl out of a situation that's a very, I'm not trying to spoil too much. It's just his moment of having to find this inner strength to get out of this situation. In the comics, that moment is a very classic moment. Like back from late 60s. Like very classic moment of him under all this heavy machinery and basically like someone's going to die if he does not get out. And he's really one of the first times he's ever challenged. And he's trying to find this strength. And it's Uncle Ben and his family that kind of mentally are what drive him to do this, to get out of it.
Okay.
In this movie, it's Tony Stark. Tony Stark is the voice in his head that encourages him to get out. I get that they don't want to rehash the origin. And I'm fine with that. You don't have to. But everybody who knows Spider-Man ought to know that there is an Uncle Ben who died, and that's the reason he is the character he is. They never make one mention of it. And the one moment that they could have pulled in a quick little 10-second little visual to let us know that that's what's driving him, they go with Tony Stark. Tony Stark becomes his driving force to overcome adversity. That, as a fan, I didn't like that. Now, you, as not a super fan,
Didn't bother me.
Didn't bother you.
But I mean, I can say
I'm all fine with that.
One less Tony Stark reference, yes.
Yeah.
But I defending the film, I'm kind of glad that they didn't stop, because that would have been an extra 30 minutes of the film. Because throw
They
a
didn't
little
have to do
face
that.
in there, they're like, who the heck's that?
Oh, we could have had such a quick moment. There was one moment where his friend Ned was asking him, like, how'd you get the powers? What happened? And they're just walking on the street. It could have been, okay, yeah, so this happened, and I didn't save my Uncle Ben, and now I want to do right by his by this. Anybody who's ever seen any of the other movies is like, yep, I got it. I remember all that. And then you could have had that one quick moment where he's like really needing to overcome this obstacle and say, hey, maybe just like a quick little like flashback scene of like a guy that now we know is Uncle Ben, just to drive him. That's it. You don't have to go through the whole origin. I don't need 20 minutes of it. I need like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. Remind us he's there. Remind us he was a part of his life. And that's how he's Spider-Man now.
Okay.
So that's me. And again, like I said, I prefaced that saying this is my geek criticism, okay? All right.
Understand.
Man, I've gotten my geek out for the weekend, so I shouldn't have to see or read anything superhero related the rest of the weekend. Overall, though, I enjoyed the film. It was a lot of fun. It was a really good movie. It's my second favorite, possibly tied for my first favorite Spider-Man movie. I still like that first Andrew Garfield one.
With the lizard as the bad guy.
Yeah, I still just like what they did with some of the choices in there.
Yeah.
I like the way they handled the origin. I just liked a lot of the beats of the movie.
Sure.
Now, I haven't seen it in a while. If I go back and watch it again, maybe Homecoming will be better. I don't know. But Homecoming is a fun movie. It's a really good movie, and it's a great promising start for where they're going to go with this character now.
If you'd asked me at the beginning of the summer, were we going to have not one, but 2 pretty good superhero movies, that have been like, no way.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have one, but definitely not 2. And we've got both Wonder Woman and Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
So
Couldn't
really
agree with you more.
surprised.
And I like Guardians of the Galaxy too. I know you didn't care for it, but I thought it was fine and fun. So it's actually been a decent summer for superhero movies as far as I'm concerned right now. It's been pretty good. They're trying to get them back on track and maybe find some different directions to go with them and not beat us over the head with the DC dour stuff that we've been dealing with, or Marvel's just so heavily interconnected films. These are putting some films on the right path. So I don't think it's fun. And I got to ask, no spoiling, but what'd you think of the final after the credits scene?
It was good. Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
It was funny. So that's one of the main thing is it funny? And it kind of it made sense. It was a clever tie-in to the rest of the film.
Yes. I'll just say that it's a nice meta message about the whole post-credit sequences, and
I really wish it could be the last one, but
well, it would be a shame for them to do any more after that one, because it's kind of like they were almost saying,
and we're done.
Yeah, we're done.
Is it true that every Marvel movie always has them? Because as far as I know,
every Marvel movie has had something.
Always have them,
either midway or at the end of the credits,
or Avenger stuff.
Every
or whatever.
movie,
everyone has.
Every movie started with the very first Iron Man movie. That was the first Marvel movie.
Yeah, because Nick Fury shows up at the end of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's still considered like by most as like the mother of all end credit sequences, because that basically kicked off everything.
Gotcha.
So I think once they realized how much people ate that up, it's like, well, we'll just do that every movie. Yeah. I agree with like films like Guardians and all. It got a little overdone when you have like 4 or 5 okay, that's too much. So I actually think this one at the end of Spider-Man was probably them saying, okay, yeah, maybe we need to cut this out. So,
That would be awesome.
all right, Spider-Man Homecoming. We're both giving it very positive reviews.
Yeah.
Chris sounds like he may actually be even a little more positive than me, which is
I
pretty
think so.
impressive.
I think so. We'll
I
have to
would
wait
not
till
have
it shakes
expected
out on
that.
Letterboxd to see who likes it more.
Would
But-
not have expected it, but no, I definitely liked it, and I'm very encouraged by where they're going with the character right now. So great. Okay, let's move on to something that doesn't require me to act like a complete geek and science fiction superhero nerd. Okay,
Okay.
let's talk about a film starring Richard Gere. The film is Norman: The Moderate Rise and Tragic Fall of a New York Fixer.
Good morning, Bill. Norman Oppenheimer.
I have to leave. This is unacceptable.
So I'll tell my partners that we had a good conversation.
May I ask what you do for a living?
What do you need? I'll help you get it.
Can you explain to me how your business works? I'm curious.
If you ever need anything, feel free to call.
You're like a drowning man trying to wave at an ocean liner.
But I'm a good swimmer.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Chris, the film Norman: The Moderate Rise and Tragic Fall of a New York Fixer. I'll never memorize that, so I have to keep reading it off the screen.
Sure.
Basically, Norman. Let's just call it Norman from here on out.
Okay.
Richard Gere stars as Norman Oppenheimer. He is kind of called what's called an operator or a fixer. His whole work involves getting people connected and helping people get what they need from other people.
Right.
We get introduced to him pretty quickly. Richard Gere is pretty prominent in just about every scene of this film. We learn who Norman Oppenheimer is pretty quickly in the film. We learn what people think of him. Mm-hmm. But as the story progresses, he befriends a young politician who's at a very low point in his life. And then we follow what happens several years later because of a friendship that did emerge between Norman and this politician, where the politician's career goes and how it affects Norman's career, to the point where they find themselves in a situation because of this relationship they've had, causing some issues and causing some dramatic decisions to be made.
Right.
So Norman's life is dramatically changed for better and for worse throughout the course of the film because of the relationships he founded. Chris, this is Richard Gere, basically his performance. The movie lives or dies by how Richard Gere pulls off a performance like Norman Oppenheimer.
Sure.
But then you've also got a very rich script. It's actually, I think, very detailed script. It's a very mature script, which is kind of nice to see every once in a while. A film that, takes a story very seriously, and actually you have to kind of think about it, and you actually have to follow it. You have to just know where it's going.
Right.
And we have a director and a writer here, Joseph Cedar, who I'm not familiar with any of his other work. I actually believe he might have done some documentary work before, if I remember correctly. Footnote was a film he did. I never saw Footnote.
Heard of Footnote, but haven't seen it.
Yeah. He did a documentary, Sharon Amrani, remember his name, back in 2010. Footnote with 2011, and now we have Norman 2016. So not a very prominent filmmaker, one that's crossed our radar much. Chris, with this being a fairly heady film, and by that I mean it's not action, it's not even really tense in too many points. It's really all dialogue driven, and you're just following 2-3 key characters through several periods of time. Mm-hmm. Did this movie engage you enough, even with its deliberate, slower style and the more dialogue heavy plot and story? Did the movie keep you engaged to the very end?
Interesting question. Good way to kind of enter discussion about this movie. I would say the answer is yes, just enough.
Yeah.
This movie is a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's not fast paced. It is also broken up into at least, I think, 4 acts.
I think it's 4 acts.
Where you see black screen, white subtitles come out. So it has dividing lines or, divisions in time. So it does kind of feel more like a play in some instances.
And this actually could be a play. Like they could easily make this into a play, I think.
Yeah. So. As far as I know, it's a totally original screenplay, totally original like idea. So not based on a play, but yeah, they could totally turn it into a play.
Yeah.
Richard Gere was really good in this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of not the biggest Richard Gere fan, but I admit he's always been a great actor. But what I admired in this is it's very opposite the Pretty Woman role that he played. He's not glamorous. He doesn't always have his act together.
He, in an interview, Richard Gere describes himself as a schlub in the movie. And I think that perfectly fits. He's a schlub.
Yeah,
so.
And and that's not to say at some scenes he's not dressed in this really nice suit and tie and walking around. It's not like he's just walking around in a t-shirt and shorts. I mean,
but it's just as much personality as it is
body
appearance.
posture and how he the way he looks with his eyes and everything. Yeah, I thought that was really well. I thought his performance was good and helps anchor the film because he's one of the people doing a lot of the talking. But I think, and I was fine with the direction. I think it comes down to the script for me seemed very choppy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes maybe deliberately so that you didn't figure out certain things, or it tried to be too creative maybe for its own good, but it ended up to me just being kind of choppy. Yeah. And some of because you have to pay attention to some of the things he says and some of the connections that he makes and how those kind of come back around later in the film. But overall, I mean, I liked it. It was a very interesting way to tell this type of story. Mm-hmm. The preview that you may have heard, hopefully you heard a little bit of the audio before we went into this review. Unfortunately, I did see it before the movie, so I was expecting a completely different type of movie.
Yeah,
kind of like a Ocean's 11 type, not screwball comedy, but definitely expected to be lighter. Kind of this guy keeps on digging himself a hole because he makes all these connections and he has to keep telling lies and try to.
In the first hour of the movie, I think the first half hour, I think they tried to build that kind of personality to it a little bit, but it really dropped off of that throughout the film. And by the end of the film, it's definitely not a light film.
No.
And I'm with you. I like the film. I like the story. The screenplay, I think, was rough. Okay. So the story itself, when I described the story to somebody, like my wife didn't get to see the movie, but I told her the story. And I realized if I tell the story's really a good story. Mm-hmm. The screenplay, though, I think is what you were commenting on. The way that the story is being told is very choppy. And I'm going to take some issue with the direction a bit because I think the director wanted to do some creative, innovative things with the film, and he did. There were some scenes I thought for this kind of film were creatively done.
Talking about how he shot the phone conversations.
And then you had one moment where Norman's character kind of goes into you don't know if it's a dreamlike phase. Everything freezes around him and slow motion, and he's able to walk through and experience it in a different way.
Well, see, that's some of the things that kept me barely interested in it because it helped keep me interested.
My thing is that they were just so sporadic that it just almost seemed like, hey, we need to do something kind of cool and creative here, so let's drop this moment in. Yeah.
Well, it worked.
And that's why I felt like it was choppy and sporadic as well. I just didn't feel like it was a very consistent tone and theme to the movie. Mm-hmm. So at one point it was fantastical, then it would go to a very dialogue heavy, very realistic for 30 minutes. And then now we throw in another 2 minutes of something a little more fantastical. Mm. It was choppy. Choppy is the best way to say it.
Okay.
I do feel like there were some moments of dialogue that could have been used to help bridge some of the scenes better and make us understand the implications of what was happening.
Okay.
I feel like there was actually a really important part of the film that they made the creative conscious to skip over with a title card. And I could see the reasoning for wanting to do that, but I actually think skipping over that entire period of the film actually made the ending less impactful than it could have been. These two characters develop supposedly a much tighter bond and friendship than what we see just in the film.
Right.
But we don't really get to see it. So when these decisions are being made at the end of the film that are really hinging on this relationship they have, it didn't carry as much weight for me because I didn't feel like I'd ever really seen the relationship build out like everybody else is saying it is.
Sure.
I really like the story. I really like Richard Gere's performance. I really like the performance of the gentleman who played the politician, his friend, who eventually becomes a higher official in Israel. I thought he was really good. So the acting was all good. It was just, I think the way they put this story together and decided to show it in a 2-hour film, there were just some. I think there were some gaps, and there were some missed opportunities to make it a more cohesive film.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I are on the same page. And the more you talk, I was blaming just purely script/screenplay, but the more you're talking about some of the decisions of how to transition between scenes and some of that, yeah, I guess that's a little bit of directing there, that throwing a little shade on the director. I'll say acting-wise, we've talked about Richard Gere. You mentioned Lior Ashkenazi, who plays the other politician, or plays the politician. Yeah, he's really good. Unknown to me. His face maybe looks a little familiar, but
he's
otherwise
really good.
unknown. But the other supporting cast in here, Michael Sheen, Charlotte Gainsbourg, Steve Buscemi, and kind of a weird cameo by Hank Azaria. All really strong
stuff.
work. Yeah,
very, very,
strong,
very well
good stuff.
No, I
and
agree.
actually, Michael Sheen kind of playing somebody who, I don't know, it was an interesting variation on some characters he's played in the past. But I really enjoyed all the acting work. But yeah.
It was a rich film. And I say rich in that there was a lot to soak in. There was a lot of great performances to enjoy. It's just the pacing really threw it off, I think, and the kind of sporadic nature of the film as well. I will say, though, I said this in our discussion after the film last night, there is a phone conversation late in the film towards the ending of this kind of an ending resolution of this relationship. I thought it was really good.
And it was done kind of, for lack of or to try to explain it, since we are not a video podcast, it's kind of visually split screen. You see the characters that are in two different locations in the world, both on the phone, but they kind of split the screen down there, and it's almost like they're looking at one another.
They're looking at one another.
And they're talking. Very effective.
Yeah.
And visually, I thought it was good. And at that point, like you're saying in the conversation, it wasn't just a trick. Some of the other ones you felt like kind of were.
Yeah.
But this one, it was very
you needed
effective.
to see them looking like they're looking at each other.
Instead of cutting back and forth between shots, have them on the screen. I agree. Something else I thought was an interesting decision, and I don't know if this is a script or screenplay or director, but I thought it was an interesting choice to make. The first conversation that happens between Richard Gere's character and Ashkenazi, the politician, you see him kind of like tracking him down. You can tell that he's going to try to make this connection. You can tell he's going to, try to get something over on him. And when they finally do meet, it takes place outside. You are inside a shop. They are outside looking through a shop window, and you do not hear anything they're saying.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting choice and well done.
Well, we had already met Norman. We knew how his conversations went with people.
Right.
So I think it was really easy at that point for us to start filling in probably what was happening in the conversation.
Sure.
And then by the time they actually walked in the store and you heard their audio, you're like, yeah, that's pretty much where I expected we were going to be at this point. So
I thought that was a good instance of bridging.
that was fine. That was not a stylistic decision necessarily. That was to help a certain element of the story. Sure. You didn't need to hear their dialogue. You just need to know what kind of person Norman was. It was just an interesting film. I guess I'm probably a little more critical on this film than, looking at a film like Spiderman. Okay. I'm not as critical of a film like Spiderman about the some of the pacing and some of the decisions on style and choice, because it's more of a spectacle film. This is not a spectacle film. And I think, I don't want to be unfair to it, but I think it's a lot easier for us to go really deep into just what exactly didn't work as well as it could have in a film like this.
Right.
So I'm probably being a little more detail-oriented and focused on the criticism of this film. But I really think it's because I think it's such a great story. I wish it had been told a little better.
The potential, and there again, even if they, the preview, the trailer, set up A, to be kind of more lighthearted, kind of a comedy, but B, I thought you would get a little more understanding of, you knew what kind of operation he was doing, but kind of the intricacies and kind of seeing his mind work and kind of seeing all this stuff happen to appreciate it. And that may have made it more exciting or more like a thriller or something. Yeah. Whereas neither one of those happened. And so that made it kind of tough.
Well, and I just have to say, this is very just more, it's a criticism that's very specific. But there's a moment in the film. It's about halfway through the film.
Okay.
Norman's riding in a taxi cab after a very exciting event he just attended.
Yeah.
And there's a sequence of the floating heads talking to him, kind of to give a passage of time of all these conversations.
Went on way too long.
Well, it wasn't really effective because I couldn't really quite make out what everybody was saying and what they were trying to express. And then it seemed like it went on for 5 minutes.
Oh, yes.
It was
completely
brutal to go through. that probably, at that point in the film, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's losing me.
Yeah.
And it didn't catch me back up until like the last 20 minutes. I thought the last 20 minutes of this film were really good. Actually, when he goes to meet with Charlotte Gainsbourg at the consulate's office, and they have their conversation, that's when the movie got me back in and reeled me back in. I'm like, oh, okay, I see where this is going now, and I like where it's heading. I'm now interested again to find out how it's going to end. There was a good gap of 30, 40 minutes in the middle that I'm just like, the film's kind of losing me at this point. I'm not really that interested in it. So
I'm right there with you.
Okay. All right. Well, it's Norman. I do think it's worth seeing because I do think it's a really good performance. I think all the performances are really good. It's just, it is a choppy movie. It's not a really solid movie. It has, I think, great setup, and I think it has a wonderful last 20 minutes. And I think there are great moments in between. I just wish the whole movie was a more complete movie.
Well, I think we'd both be remiss if we didn't kind of throw out there. Obviously, this movie does deal with politics because one of the guys is a politician, and there are interesting repercussions that come about. I mean, this film was made a while ago and just got released in April of 2017 this year. So it's been out for a while, but just it's very interesting commentary on politics and how machinations of how they work and things that are said. It kind of has interesting ripple effects to things that are going on in politics.
It was very interesting timing, yes, when the movie came, when we saw the movie last night. Very interesting after news that had been kind of going through this past week. So as soon as I was watching the film and a couple references to a certain country, references to having meetings and exchanging favors, I'm like, oh, boy, this is timely. So, right. Okay, well, that's Norman, the moderate rise and tragic fall of a New York fixer. It is in some select theaters. It won't be going wide, so you may have to kind of wait to see it when it comes online in the next couple months. I think it's worth watching. I think it's worth seeing. I definitely think it's worth talking about. So anyway, okay, so we're going to take a quick break. And Chris, when we come back, we're just going to hit a couple movie news items and then finish up with our recommendations of the episode. So everybody stay tuned. You're listening to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Themesh.tv is a podcast network where you can find this show and other shows as well, all for free. What a country.
That's right. Hooray.
All for free. Yay for free. You go to themesh.tv, and by going to that website, you can find all the shows that are available. They're in podcast form, which means you do have the option of playing them right there on the website, or to make it true podcasty, you can actually subscribe to the podcast. And by doing that, it means that every time we put out a new episode of this show, you get it delivered to your device of choice, almost like your little personal internet DVR for content. And we encourage you to go check out not only our back episodes, but also other shows on the Mesh.tv network as well. Chris, just because I don't want us to wait and mention this at the end of the show,
okay,
I do want to let everybody know, and as I'm sure you echo my sentiments, we do have our third annual Footcandle Film Festival coming up September 22nd through the 24th, 2017. It's the 2017 edition of our festival, third year. We're terribly excited.
Yes.
And I think I'm safe in saying by the time you're listening to this episode, you should be able to go to footcandlefilmfestival.com, see a schedule, see the films, and buy tickets.
Oh, I don't know about the buy tickets thing. You'll definitely be able to see a schedule.
Okay, you can see a schedule.
But you'll be able to buy tickets probably by the end of July, depending on when you're listening to this
you're
episode.
right. You're right. Sorry, my bad. End of July. Okay, go to the website now as you're listening.
Right.
If you see there's an opportunity to buy tickets, buy tickets. If it doesn't say buy tickets,
just bookmark
it. Come back in like a week or two, and you should be able to buy tickets.
There you go.
All right, good. Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. My schedule's all messed up in my brain. But regardless, the Footcandle Film Festival, we're looking at probably 30-some films that we'll be showing over the course of a 3-day
I
weekend.
believe the official count is 33 films.
33 films.
Yes.
Wow. Between Friday morning and Saturday or Sunday afternoon that weekend here in Hickory, North Carolina. So if you've never been to Hickory, this is a great time to come and visit and check out what we have to offer. If you do travel into the area specifically for the film festival and you're going to be here, please drop us a note and let us know. We'd love to meet you and welcome you to the area. Otherwise, if you are a member of our film society already, obviously you're going to have opportunity to buy your tickets, and we look forward to seeing you at the festival. So this should be a lot of fun. Anybody's welcome. It's open to the public. You can buy tickets for individual films or get a pass for the entire weekend. So that way you don't have to pick and choose. Right. That really is your best move, right? I mean, from a financial analyst standpoint, buy the pass, then you just decide which films you want to come see. Some of our members last year actually stayed for every film.
Absolutely. We did have people that saw everything. Yep.
You're in the movie theater for 72 hours. It was awesome. Now, Chris and I
may have done it out of solidarity. They figured if we had to be there, they were going to be there.
Chris and I in a movie theater for 72 hours. That's awesome. But, for some people, it may be a little tough. But it's a fun weekend. And we have several filmmakers traveling to the area to be here as well. So I do encourage you to go to the website, check out the films that we're showing. And if you're listening to this later on, you should be able to buy tickets as well.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, Chris, just a couple quick news items. I don't have a lot of news to share this episode. I'm just going to kind of hit a couple interesting projects that I'm curious some thoughts on. There's a filmmaker. His name is Quentin. I think it's Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
So he supposedly has a new film he's working on. It seemed like he's making a movie that takes place around the events of the Manson family murders. You're squinting. Your face is kind of creating this kind of painful look. Are you worried about this?
Yeah. Okay. We've reviewed several of his films here on the show. You can find them in our archive. I like Quentin Tarantino as a filmmaker. I think he makes very interesting films. Hearing that he is going to, make a film, the subject matter is like, the Manson family murders, specifically one of the ones he's going to do is the Sharon Tate murder. It's very simple. Why? Mm-hmm. That is my question. Mm-hmm. I don't.
And it's not a why like in a threatening why. It's a why like truly prove to me why. Yeah. Okay.
Just the type of films I go after. I don't seek out crime movies about, especially true crime movies that are going to be dark in nature, which obviously this is going to be. I
can't imagine it would be light.
No, it's just not something I'm interested in. And, the fact that if he was making a true crime movie that was going to be dark, okay, but that's one thing. But his sensibilities, his over-the-top violence and all that kind of stuff, playing into something that is based on true life, I just don't, but I'll say this. Mm-hmm. I do admire him as a filmmaker. I like him as a filmmaker. I probably will see it, but Can I say that I'm looking forward to it? Absolutely not. Do I have reservations about it? Yes. But, maybe this would be a film that he makes that is completely unlike any other film that he has ever made.
Well,
what if he made this film and there were not examples of on-screen violence or blood at all? Mm-hmm. Things are going on, but it's all about stylistic choices.
What if it's like a Zodiac?
Right.
Which Zodiac is, mostly dialogue driven, mostly, internal drama, not looking at overt violence or anything. So.
Right. So I kind of like, that's my overall thing is, why?
Yeah.
Kind of like, why is he doing this? But I don't know.
I'm going to take a contrary view to it.
Okay.
I actually am encouraged by this. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because of 3 words. The Hateful Eight. That is a film, when it was described as being his next project, I'm like, oh, yes, perfect. This is Quentin Tarantino's, this is exactly what he does best, is this kind of setup and all these multiple characters, and it's going to be violent, and it's going to be all that. And I thought the movie was really bad. I just didn't like it at all. So it was almost like,
I think we did review that one on the show. That was one of my least favorite Quentin Tarantino movies.
I didn't care for it.
There were some good parts in it, but overall,
it had a few good moments. A couple scenes I remember offhand I liked, but overall, I didn't care for the film.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay,
never have wanted to revisit it, which
no,
that's
I haven't either.
time.
Now I'm at the point of, hey, you know what? Bring it on. See what you can do with this. I want to see if you can do something interesting with this subject matter. He hasn't directed a film that's truly based on a real event, as far as I can tell.
I mean, you're right. I mean, Inglourious Bastards had historical reference. But see, I was totally comfortable with that because it wasn't taking like
it was a completely revisionist view of something.
And you knew that going in.
Maybe this is going to be a revisionist view of the Manson family murders. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I think is also a little interesting. So, two things. One, this will be his 9th film.
And how many did he say he was going to make?
He was going to do 10.
Okay.
So, 10 features and I'm out. That was what he said. So, this is number 9. That's something to keep in mind. Then 2, there is another Charles Manson family murder movie being made at the same time.
Great.
So are we going to have another situation like when the Truman Capote film came out and you had Infamous and Capote, 2 films like it's kind of the same time, 2 different actors playing Truman Capote.
Do you know who's directing the other one or anything about it? Okay.
All I know is Kate Bosworth is involved in it. So I have heard that...
there's been some casting for the Tarantino
Well, there's been discussions of actors. Nobody's signed on yet, I don't believe. Brad Pitt is supposedly being talked to be involved. Don't assume he's playing Charles Manson. Okay. I'm just saying he could be playing anything, but he's been talked to. Jennifer Lawrence has been talked to.
Okay.
And then we also have Margot Robbie is considered to be playing Sharon Tate.
Okay.
Which I could see that.
Yeah.
And there's a gentleman, I don't know if he's ever worked with this guy before, Samuel L. Jackson. That's also possibly going to be playing a part. Do they work together much?
I don't know.
Just most of their films together.
Right.
So anyway, yes, Samuel L. Jackson, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie and Jennifer Lawrence are the ones talked to right now about parts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just very trepidatious. But
we'll see. Hey, you know what? I'm hopeful. I hope the Hateful Eight was one misfire. Because really, he was really doing some great stuff for a while. I mean, Inglourious Bastards is still my absolute favorite of his film.
At the end of that, the line by I think Brad Pitt
I think this may be my masterpiece.
Yep. Absolutely.
I thought Kill Bill right before it was also really, really good.
Both volumes.
And then I like Django Unchained.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the peak for me of Tarantino. It's like those were the pinnacle. I like Pulp Fiction and all, but I really love Kill Bill. Really love Inglourious Bastards, and I liked a whole lot Django Unchained.
How about Jackie Brown?
I need to go see it again.
Yeah, I've recommended it, I think, on the show before. I know you have.
So, I need to see it again. I realize.
Okay.
But yeah, Hateful Eight was the first one for me to say, well, Death Proof I didn't like either. But I have a hard time really considering that a full one of his films.
It was like an experiment.
Yeah, Hateful Eight was the one that just really let me down.
Yeah,
so,
I understand.
All right, one more thing let me mention, and I can't believe I haven't asked you about this.
Okay.
Because we're actually only a couple weeks away from this film coming out.
We didn't talk about Power Rangers because that's sacred. We didn't talk about.
Well, I know you're such a big fan.
And so we just
I know you're like I am with Spiderman. You are with Power Rangers.
Right. Right.
August 4th, The Dark Tower comes out. Chris, you are
so it does.
You read books.
I do.
You read Stephen King books.
I do.
I'm sure you read The Dark Tower.
I have read all the Dark Tower books.
But yet, this movie has not come up in our conversations. It's actually, I think, relatively speaking, getting very little buzz right now. Yeah. So are you at all interested in seeing a feature film adaptation of this book?
I think I mentioned a long time ago when it was first The Dark Tower is finally going to be.
Okay, that was probably 8 years ago.
But they didn't have a director named. Yeah. They didn't have, I don't think they had Idris Elba named or Matthew McConaughey maybe, but I do remember briefly talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh, that could be really good. I've always thought they should make a movie of that. I'm a little worried.
Yeah.
The reason I'm worried is because the first poster that I saw was a really, really cool poster. It was basically like this. It had 2 buildings coming down from the top, but it was kind of like a negative space poster.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It was really cool. Really cool poster. Really liked it. But then when I started seeing trailers, something about it just doesn't quite. It seems all kind of real concerned about effects,
yes,
and stuff like that. Which Stephen King's Stephen King stories are all about character development. And yeah, I mean, they have some pretty crazy things happen to them that you need effects for, such as going in between worlds and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just a little worried. And the fact that there hasn't been a lot of buzz other than the fact that, hey, this movie's finally getting made kind of worries me. I do like Idris Elba. I think it is interesting to have him play the gunslinger because I don't think the gunslinger was originally African American. So that's awesome that they cast him as that because it's like, why does it matter? And Matthew McConaughey, I think he could be very good in the part that he's in. He plays the bad guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, something about it.
The effects are what kind of threw me as well. Now, granted, I've never read the books.
Okay.
I'm not a, quote, reader, unquote.
You do know how to read, though.
I do, but if it's longer than a newspaper article or magazine article, I kind of check out.
Sure.
But I know enough about what the story's about. And I've been anxious to see this adapted to film because this will actually give me a chance to follow the story.
Sure.
And I love the casting. I know Ron Howard was attached to direct it for a while, and I thought, well, that's not the most inspired choice, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, when I saw the trailer had a few interesting moments I liked, but here's the biggest thing I've read is the gateway, the doorway between the worlds. A lot of people are very upset that just seems to be like way over, like because it's symbolic of how the whole film's looking to be, very CGI, very special effects driven. When that really wasn't the intent of it in the books. It was a door. I mean, it was more of a passageway, but this becomes like this big Stargate looking thing, between there. Which I think that's a sign for people like, okay, they're going to be really focusing on effects, which that's not what this should be about.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's concerned. I still will see it because I want to see it. There's so much rich material there. I can't remember how many books. I think there are like 7 books. There are a lot of books for the Stephen King series. So it would be a shame if this is a one and done.
Well, they're talking about, the whole plan was, and this was back during the Ron Howard conversation, there was going to be a movie.
Speaking of Ron Howard, what movie is he been brought in to do recently?
Solo.
That's right.
He's now.
That was last episode.
We talked about all the Star Wars drama and the 2 guys getting canned from the Solo directing gig.
Right.
Ron Howard's been brought in to basically tidy up the movie, finish it up, film whatever's left.
Right.
So, not a very inspired choice there either. I mean, I think you basically call Ron Howard when you just need a competent job done to finish out a movie.
You are being awfully rough on Opie.
I'm not a huge fan. I mean, I think his movies are fine. I like Apollo 13. What else has he done? See, that's the thing. I know he's made like 50 films.
A Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man.
Yeah, those are fine.
Backdraft.
I actually liked Backdraft when it came out as a kid.
Okay.
He's got good movies. It's just they're never inspired movies. It's just I never walk away saying that was a really well-directed movie.
Notice I didn't mention the Da Vinci Code movies.
Oh, God, those are horrible. So, yeah, anyway, it's a mixed bag. They are still planning on this being a combination movie series and TV companion.
What?
No, that was the plan all along. They were going to do like a series of movies, but also parts of the story were going to be continuing in more of a TV series.
I've never understood why they didn't do Dark Towers like in HBO. Like after Game of Thrones finishes, just do Dark Tower because to me that seems like that would have made sense.
That probably would have made the better sense. But they're saying
it could have gone on for years.
The ambitious adaptation plans still call for a movie trilogy and a television companion. So they're saying the intention is to have Idris Elba reprise his role on television. The first episode of a show has already been written. We hope to retain Ron Howard's original idea to mix the platforms. So we'll see. He said if the movie is Roland the Gunslinger, the show is his origin story based on the 4th novel of the series, Wizard and Glass.
Right. So
a movie trilogy, and then you got a TV series that explores the origin.
I can see that.
Okay. I agree with you, though. I mean, when you've got something that's serialized like this and it's a continuing story and it's rich and there's a lot of places to go, why not a Netflix or an HBO series type thing?
Right. And the books are so detailed and, I don't know.
Anyway, I was curious about your thoughts because we hadn't really talked about it in a really long time.
I am worried.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Maybe it's another one will come out and actually have some surprise and it would be a good movie. Who knows? Yeah. Okay, Chris, let me ask you. Recommendation time.
Yes.
What film do you want to recommend to our lovely listeners that they check out to beat the heat this summer?
So I am going to recommend a documentary that is called American Anarchist. Alan, do you own or have you ever heard of the book Anarchist Cookbook?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I don't own it, but I've heard of it.
Did you ever have any friends who owned it?
I'm sure I did.
So I own a copy, have it at my house. I got it as a joke gift in college. So for those of you not familiar with what the Anarchist Cookbook is, it is one of the most infamous books ever written. It was written back in the 60s and 70s. The author, the guy who wrote it, he wrote it at 19. He is now 65.
Wow.
Okay, so this book, the Anarchist Cookbook, as you can maybe tell from the title, tells you things like how to make bombs, how to blow up bridges, all these really like kind of crazy things that just crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
But he wrote it as kind of a response to the counterculture upheaval in the 1960s and early 70s. So he then distanced himself from this book. Well, in the meantime, things like Columbine happened, Oklahoma City bombing happened, of which they found copies of this book on these people's person or at their house.
I do recall all
that. So it has a very complicated history. Hearing this guy talk about why he wrote the book, what he thinks about what has happened, his life now, what he does for a living now, it's very interesting. The interviewer of this movie is Charlie Siskel, the director. The writer and director of this movie is Charlie Siskel. He was co-director on Finding Vivian Maier.
Okay, right.
About the photography that got nominated for an Oscar. But he's just sole director and writer on this. Many people may not like this documentary because you can hear, you never see him on camera, but you can hear him asking questions. And he is very determined and very pointed about what he wants from William Powell, the writer of the book, to say what he grills him. He is very intense. But at no time did I ever feel like William Powell couldn't take it because he's a very interesting individual, obviously an intellectual, obviously very intelligent. So I could see some people being turned off by this interviewer's style and that he's very, he's nagging, he's very intense, and it's like he's just won't let go of things. But I think it's because it's very interesting subject material and he knows William Powell can come out and say what he wants to say. So it's very interesting, can be very uncomfortable because of the subject matter for some people. But I have to say I found it interesting. It's also only an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's pretty short.
So is it a fairly new?
It was made apparently in 2016, but just recently came out on Netflix is where I caught up with it. So you can get it on Netflix. You may be able to get it through iTunes or on Amazon as well. But it's fairly new. So I think maybe it was briefly in maybe a couple of theaters.
Okay.
But American Anarchist, if you're interested at all in it, I recommend you check it out. So.
Cool. Okay. Well, I couldn't imagine going in a completely more of an opposite direction with my recommendation.
Okay.
So, little background. I have all movies I own copies of. I have digitized in a nice digital server in my house, so I can pull them up on any computer, on my TV. I can actually pull them up from here remotely and watch them remotely.
Right.
So I'm just really proud of myself for having done this. But what this also caused me to do over the last year is I get to kind of go back and watch I get to watch moments of films.
Yes.
That's what's really cool is that I don't have to go and say, well, do I have to commit myself to watching this movie again that I remember I had? Like if it was on DVD and I got to try to find the spot in the scene where it is. Right. I pretty much know, okay, this movie, let me just fast forward real quick on screen to 30 minutes in and this is great and I can watch this. So there's a movie that This
is how we got the recommendation of Stakeout, I believe.
It is. Yeah. I'm gone through all my movies. So here's another one.
Okay.
We may have talked about this on the show years ago when it first came out. I don't remember. It's a 2008 film. I don't remember. Did we cover 2008? Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
I don't know. Well, our show's been around for a while. We've got tons of episodes, but
it may have been really early on.
Okay.
I ended up watching a huge part of Tropic Thunder again.
Oh, I don't know if...
Did we ever talk about this film?
I don't know. I don't know if we reviewed it or not.
I seem to remember us talking about it, but I don't know if that was just in the hallway or we actually on a microphone.
Go ahead and talk to it because a lot of people probably deserve to at least hear about it.
Well, my thing is, it was directed by Ben Stiller, who He's kind of gotten a mixed bag reaction on different films he's made over the years, both starring and his directing. He directed That Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which did not do very good.
I saw it.
Yeah. But yet, I watched Tropic Thunder, and even though the whole movie doesn't hold up, okay, it's not a start to finish, terribly enjoyable movie. Mm-hmm. But the first 20 minutes of the film, and then selected moments throughout the film, are comic gold. I'm sorry, but they are really, really funny. The whole opening 20 minutes when we're introduced to all these actors, basically the premise of the film is it's actors, real actors playing actors, and those actors are being brought in to star in a very dramatic, very powerful film about Vietnam based on somebody's memoir. And these are very spoiled actors, most of them, or known for comedy or known for other things, coming together to try to make a serious Vietnam film. So the movie is about the issues with them trying to make this Vietnam film.
I would like to revisit Tropic Thunder because I'm glad you're recommending it.
It's
because
so good.
The thing is, hearing all that, this seems like it is going to be the funniest movie ever. Expectations for that movie, I feel like, were super
They were,
high.
which is probably unfair.
There's a lot of talent involved.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller's directing. It just sounds like, how can this movie go wrong? And so I liked it, but I remember, kind of like you're saying, the first 20 minutes are amazing. It kind of falls off, but I think I need to revisit it.
Yeah,
it's still good.
Don't go in watching it for the entire movie. Go in to watch certain moments, because that first 20, 30 minutes is classic. And I will say, I'm doing this on a couple reasons. A, we talked about Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yes.
He has
Robert Downey's part in this is amazing.
He has a very interesting role in this film.
Yes, he does.
He really just gets to cut loose. It's probably my favorite thing of his he's done.
Yeah, maybe mine too.
And then another thing is Tom Cruise. I'm going to come back from talking about The Mummy a couple episodes ago. Tom Cruise is freaking hilarious in this film.
There are
completely playing against type, playing one of the most vulgar characters you can imagine.
I don't like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I know you don't.
Actively kind of dislike him.
Yeah.
However, if I had to point to two things,
I know the two
things
films.
that he done. Yeah, you do. His role in this, Tropic Thunder, and his role in Magnolia.
Yeah.
Those two things, I'm like, okay, those were good things. I enjoyed that. So, yeah, that's true. Tom Cruise and Tropic Thunder.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think those are the two films that Tom Cruise gets to act, and not just be Tom Cruise. I love his role in Magnolia. It's a close tie for me whether I like his role in Magnolia more than I like it in Tropic Thunder.
That's awesome.
I can watch his scenes in Tropic Thunder and just be happy. I mean, he's so ridiculously obscene and so playing against type. It's just so much fun to watch. Steve Coogan's in it, plays a really good part.
Jack Black.
He's not in it for very long, which is funny. Jack Black's good. Man, it's a fun.
I need to read it. You have it digitally. Do you know if it's available on Netflix?
I don't. Okay. I don't. That's the one thing I don't know, but I do know I enjoyed watching it again, watching moments of it. Again, watch the first 30, 40 minutes. You can fast forward to the middle half hour or 45 minutes and then get to the end again, because I think the end kind of really buttons it up really nice. So it's definitely a great meta movie on the idea of making movies with ridiculous actor characters. So, and they really poke fun at actors. Terribly poke at actors. And it's always kind of fun when you see actors making fun of themselves as actors, because that's really what all these characters are doing. So Tropic Thunder, it was fun to rewatch some of that the other day. So, okay, I think we're done. Chris, Spider-Man Homecoming, positive from both of us.
Yes.
Surprising. I guess surprising. I'm actually really happy. So I was really concerned how you were going to come
more positive than you on a Spider-Man
maybe
movie,
a little bit, yeah.
Crazy.
Norman, with the Richard Gere film, we're both leaning positive.
Yes.
I think we can both say it's worth watching, but we wish it was better.
Sure.
There were a lot of opportunities to make that a stronger film.
Absolutely.
And then we had our news items, and then we just did our recommendations. Yours was American Anarchist. Is that the name of the documentary?
Yeah, American Anarchist.
Anarchist.
Yes.
On the documentary side. And then I had Tropic Thunder from 2008 that I wanted to bring back up. Dredge back up and have some people watch it. Oh, it's not for the kids. No, just in case you're curious, just because it has Ben Stiller, this is not Meet the Parents or whatever. This is very, very adult, but very funny. Okay, so that's it. If you want to check out past episodes or make sure you subscribe to our show, go to themesh.tv or find us at Footcandle Film Society, which is our little community of film goers here in our area that we put together monthly screenings for our members and for the guests and the general public. And you can always find out what we're screening or what we're talking about at footcandle.org for that website. Chris, but if somebody didn't want to just read what we were doing, they actually want to talk to us, how do you recommend they do that?
Communicate.
Yes.
You can drop us a line at info@themesh.tv and just mention Footcandle Films in the subject line and let us know movies you want us to check out or movies you think we should reconsider if we're wrong about something, or something you want to recommend that, we might want to watch in the future, whatever. Just contact us, talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. There again, it's info@themesh.tv. Alan has already mentioned the film festival, so I don't have to bring that up. But, obviously, go film festival.
You can mention it again.
Right.
I have no problem with
why
that.
Why not? Also, Alan and I tend to try to touch base on Letterboxd every once in a while, where we kind of keep a diary of films. I keep a log of the past recommendations from this show. So if you're curious...
I used to.
So if you're curious about what movies I've recommended in the past, other than listening to back episodes, you can also just go to Letterboxd and kind of look at the list on that. So.
I do put in every film I watch on Letterboxd. So if I watch it, it's on Letterboxd. I don't write, unfortunately. Again, I wish I did. I should be writing. I don't write and I don't read. That's basically what you've learned about me in this episode. But at least I do know how to click a button saying I saw this movie tonight. So you can at least find out what I'm watching. But I always love it if people make comments or have questions about films. We love talking about them. So, okay, great. We're going to wrap it up. Chris, as always, thanks, man.
No problem.
Good seeing you. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.